Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. We are here with class 4, Invincible, Innocence, and the Rivers of Light, Oceans of Benevolence, and how we awaken our inner healer through reclaiming our invincible innocence. And this teaching today is going to be power-packed with so many high vibes and good vibrations that hopefully we can all increase our upper limits and just keep going with it. And to start, we're going to move into an opening prayer and meditation that is really focused in the heart and heart coherence. And each week of Entheogenesis, I'm really consciously opening our sacred space together with a new prayer, because there's literally limitless ways to open and close sacred space. And as we try different ways out, as we experience different forms of prayer, meditation, and that conscious opening of a love and reverent filled space, then little by little, we find what just feels natural and good and true for us. And I highly encourage you, whether you work individually on your own with the sacred plant medicines, or you work with others, or you sit with other facilitators, that you have a way that you honor the opening of sacred space within you. So trying these out and feeling, truly what feels authentic and good for you, because that then becomes a way of, self. It's like a hypnotic induction method for yourself to move from, the day-to-day state of consciousness into that heart-centered shamanic awareness. Some would call that the theta brain state. So to move into that expanded consciousness, to be able to move into higher, broader, wider awareness of the great field of life. And every shamanic ceremony is always, for every shamanic ceremony for medicine and healing is always for 3 things. And if it's outside of this purview of these 3 things, then perhaps it's not a medicine ceremony, it's some other type of ceremony. And the 3 intentions, the 3 approaches are for personal healing, in prayer and healing for another. And that can be anybody from a family member, an animal, a tree, a forest, the sacred waters, any aspect of the great web of life. And number 3, to learn and to grow. So those are the intention-filled prayers. And the opening prayer is basically a way of opening that sacred space and simultaneously aligning to divinity. Whatever your relationship is with divinity, with spirit, Gaia, our Buddha nature, however you relate to that big love, is what the opening prayer, the opening intention is really about aligning to. For any true medicine ceremony, we want to not only be aligned to that big love, but we want to be asking for sanction, which is basically guidance, blessing, and then through that guidance and blessing, permission. So the big, kind of like our higher self, soul self, is receiving that versus, our what could be called our lower self, which can think something's a great idea. But when we're not in that full place of what is called in some traditions surrender, then often our minds can get ahead of that alignment to spirit and love. So with all that said, perhaps we can come into a heart-centered awareness through taking some deep breaths, perhaps softening your eyes and closing them if that's good and appropriate for you in this moment. And even a few conscious breaths immediately aligns us into the present moment. So as we become fully conscious of inhale and exhale, I invite you to breathe into your heart center from all directions, retaining in your heart center, and then exhaling from your heart center. Breathing in, retaining, and gently exhaling. Breathing in the love for life, all the beauty of the natural world, anything that you're grateful for. Retaining this in your heart and really allowing this inhale, this breathing into love to nourish and feed your heart center. And then as you exhale, exhaling and offering your love, your gratitude, and your appreciation. In this way, we breathe in love. We are nourished and sustained through the retention of this love. And we exhale and offer this love out in all directions. And into this breath, we call forth the divine love within creation, which is all love. We call forth the remembrance of all the moments, even if it's just faint glimmers of love that we've experienced in the last 24 hours. The last week. Throughout our lives, so many moments of presence, of beauty, we give gratitude for even the capacity to open and feel love and gratitude, to witness and experience beauty. And I invite each one of you in this beautiful hoop of entheogenesis, those present in this call and all those listening in, to in this moment remember a place in nature where you have felt the most at one. And now if you're like me, there are literally countless places in nature where I've experienced this beauty. But I invite you to find one very strong memory. Perhaps it's a recent memory, perhaps it's from your childhood or when your children were young, where you felt the most at one and really call forth your sacred senses, remembering the feeling in your body of perhaps the sun on your skin, the warmth, the coolness, the breeze. Remembering the beauty of the light touching down upon the leaves, the trees, the waters, the desert, wherever you are. Remembering the sound of this place. Or perhaps the epic silence. Remembering the smell and bringing all of your sacred senses, each of which is a unique facet of your divine imagination, which is an endowment from the Creator. Breathing into this at one-ment and exhaling into this feeling where nature, Gaia, is so beautiful that the only thing to say, that the only thing that comes from you is, wow. Now, the beauty is so great that your mental processes just settle. Now notice how as you open to the beauty, there's just a very, very natural movement into that feeling of wow, which is really the inner movement of gratitude. And the more you drink in the beauty, the more this feeling of gratitude opens. And how what naturally comes from that experience of opening in the moment into gratitude and beauty is the resonant vibration, the embodied experience of what we call love. Now, love is so vast and so great that it's impossible to really describe that feeling and that state. Some can also describe it as grace, peace, satori, samadhi. But for the sake of this communication and this teaching and our medicine work, we call it love. It's the best word we have at this point. And notice how the heart center lights up, comes online just through this simple remembrance. And I welcome us as a non-local, multi-temporal circle to consciously connect the beauty of our hearts to this hoop, to this intention, to this deep and profound learning and remembrance of entheogenesis, the continual arising of divinity from within. Beautiful. Thank you for the quality of your presence for this opening prayer and meditation. And when you feel ready, I invite you to take a few deep breaths. And we'll transition into our teaching. Awesome. All right. So we've covered quite a bit of territory so far. And really, in the realm of entheogenesis, the territory is vast. And this journey, this 7-week ceremonial journey, is really a guide and a foundational primer for your resource and empowerment, for your own healing, and anybody in your life you support and serve in their healing. And over the last 3 weeks, we have touched upon some foundational understandings for, the conditions that are required for true healing. Now, once again, to recap, we cannot make healing happen, which is sort of paradoxical, not sort of, it is paradoxical, because healing is an inside job. But what I mean by that is we can't make healing happen from the ideas and the preset conditions that we have. It's like, no matter how much I love somebody, we can enter a ceremony and I can't make their healing happen. And honestly, I can't do that for myself either. But I can create and co-create these specific conditions. And through the creation and co-creation of these specific conditions, then the inner healer within me, within each person in the circle, will naturally arise. And that's a different inner state and even a different inner mechanism than making the healing happen. So to break that down more, we understand now that in order for true healing to take place, we have to have the inner healer be honored, to recognize that this is not somebody else doing the healing work, that we're actually supporting one another to awaken the inner healer. And the most profound body workers I know understand that their body work, their hands-on touch, their healing, their acupuncture needles, the way they formulate remedies and herbs, that's only ever supporting the universal intelligence within to awaken. And that is true as well within the ceremonial work with the plants and psychedelic medicines. And so we have the inner healer. However, for the inner healer to feel secure in arising, the conditions that we need to bring into our own state of being and then foster within the sacred circle that we are a part of is a absolute reverence and devotion to honoring spiritual sovereignty, body autonomy, and true consent. These 3 aspects of sacred space are non-negotiable. If you want to have healing, you have to have body autonomy be honored and consent. And we can't truly be in our body autonomy and actually own that consent until we begin to access what it means to be fully in our sovereignty. And now sovereignty is a very big and charged and wildly powerful word, right now in our collective unfolding, because there's so little true sovereignty in the world. And yet this word is like a psychoactive medicine in and of itself, where it seems like when we hear it, it's like, whoa, what's that? That sounds like something I need to learn a little bit more about. And so the process of exploring and attuning and inquiring into spiritual sovereignty in and of itself is a healing movement in our lives. However, that is just the beginning, because truly what we have found as shamanic practitioners is that we have literally infinite resource to connect to. that just here in this world, this incredibly beautiful jewel of a planet, every part of nature is so infinitely beautiful. I was just walking on the beach with our daughter this morning, and there's all these tiny shells. And as we got really close to the beach and the ground, it's like the tiniest shell is just as perfectly created as the biggest one. With the eyes to see, like any kid who's in their joy in the moment, like, wow, that tiny shell has infinite resource in it, because nature is infinitely beautiful, and true beauty always leads us to love, and love is a great medicine. And so in this week, we're going to dive into the rivers of light within us, which is the vast meridian system, which is very connected to our nervous system. In fact, they could be one and the same. However, when we're working with the shamanic worldview, we're really working with the energy body as perceived energetically. The nervous system is also energetic, and these two are we're often merging these now in this time, because there's so much development of really amazing therapeutics with the nervous system in the Western movement. And that research is helping connect us to the wisdom of earth-honoring animistic cultures, like the wisdom traditions of the Andes, the Amazon, and the yogic traditions, as well as the Chinese systems. To me, it's all blending together now. It's all merging into one whole. So Darcy and I use the language for this as the rivers of light. And as we open to the rivers of light and oceans of benevolence, we begin to clear our inner channels. And as we clear our inner channels of the interference patterns that we have created or inherited, we've either created them through our resistance to what is, and we also create them through living within the illusions of separation. When we live in the illusion of separation, we create patterns in our lives and in our bodies that most often are in dissonance or interference. And little by little, those interference and dissonance patterns create patterns of unwellness in our bodies, minds, and spirits. And so as we begin this healing journey, and really what can just light up so powerfully within entheogenic ceremonies and spaces, is we see not only our meridian system and our chakra system, but we see where and often feel where there's frozen and stuck energy. And these places where that will get lit up with the medicine, it actually feels painful, but it also energetically, people will often see dense, like it'll be like gray or black or red. It'll have a very heavy feeling or sharp feeling. It wasn't there before they had the medicine, but once the medicine comes on, then these energetic blocks begin to become illuminated. And so then from there, often the question is, well, what do we do about it? Because, if you just take the medicine, you're like, oh, the medicine's making me feel this way, then you've missed the healing opportunity. Because what the medicine does is it's like a light bulb. We go into that closet and we turn on the switch, and there's usually cleanup to do. And so that cleanup looks like all these different energy patterns. And as our shamanic site opens as practitioners, part of that opening as a practitioner is beginning to for me, I only turn this on when somebody is in ceremony with me and it's of benefit. Otherwise, I don't have this on. It's like I just have a little block And then when a ceremony is like, it's of service, okay, I'm opening up. And then I can see when it's appropriate and it's a good time, I can see the energy meridians, can see the patterns in a body. I can't force that sight, but the medicine and spirit and our souls will sometimes reveal that to assist another in their healing. And that's a beautiful and powerful place to be. However, that's only offered when I know that I'm there to assist their inner healer to awaken. All right. Okay, I'm just going through my notes here. Here we go. So, these energy patterns where the rivers of light and our energy bodies get blocked is actually the primary role of the curandera or curandero in traditional Kamaska curanderismo, what Darcy and I have trained in with Washuma medicine, these beautiful traditions of the North Coast and the Andes. Now, a curandera is seen to be one who cures. So I find this really fascinating because this isn't about the practitioner being the healer. Actually, the role of the practitioner is to help assist removing the impedimentas, the impediments to that natural flow of the rivers of light within. And when these rivers of light are impeded, then they're traditionally said to be impeded by 3 different types of energies. One is hucha, which is the resistance to what is. It's created as a dense, heavy energy created through our resistance to what is. Second is the energy of susto, which is the energy of shock. Now, I see this, and we often articulate this in our culture as trauma. But trauma, have you noticed how big of a word that is and what a big umbrella that covers now? Where, I've heard some of my daughter's friends be like, oh, I went to this for a play date and it was traumatizing. Which was basically that their toy got taken by another kid. And well, on one level, yeah, that can be traumatizing. The level of what trauma is used for has kind of gotten a little bit, it's used for everything, basically. But in the susto understanding it's where something happens that leaves reverberations. So this can be anything from an accident, especially when we're children, if we have a big fall or something really startles us, that can leave a strong imprint of this energy of susto, which I usually see as like shattered energy. It looks like shattered reverberations in my vista. It can also be the core of when there's been any sort of tragedy, loss, or sudden death. That's the extreme. So everything from a fall to a sudden death, anything in between that can be a form of susto. And then there's a third energy, which is daño. Daño is the energy of harm. Now, what was taught is that daño comes from outside of us and is the energy of either intentional harm or unintentional harm. And that is still true. The energy of harm has radically negative impacts in our bodies, minds, hearts, and spirits. When somebody has been raped, it really impacts them. That would be a form of daño in this cosmology. However, while there can be a lot of harm in our world, in our culture, in the dominant culture, in the Westerners that we work with, the primary source of daño is self-harm. Overwhelmingly, the type of daño that Darcy and I work in our ceremonial practice with is self-harm. And so understanding that each of these three types of energies, kucha, susto, daño, form impedimentas, energy blocks within the whole unified being of your luminous bubble, which includes body, mind, heart, spirit, emotions, levels of soul, that those energies create impedimentas that block the rivers of light. And so then the question or the task becomes, how do we transform those impedimentas? Now, a traditional path of becoming a curandera or curandero is learning to find those within yourself first and learn how to transform those from within, and have amazing elders or mentors like we've had that we can go and say, hey, I'm seeing this, I'm experiencing this. And then very rarely will they be like, oh, come here, I'm going to take care of that for you. You know, I'm going to sing a song over you or blow tobacco. Usually our elders and mentors would be like, here's what you do, go practice this. Come back and tell me how it goes. They're not going to do the work for us. They're going to help us to learn the tools to do the work. So with all of that said, may this class empower that same level of apprenticeship within you. For what we find within our being and our own personal healing journey is the medicine that, as we transform and alchemize that, that's the medicine we can offer to others. And so it's so beautiful and it's so powerful to be in this internally remembered state, but then working in sacred community. All right. And when we do this in psychological terms, this is moving from post-traumatic stress into post-traumatic growth. You know, how do we take that impossible tragedy that almost everybody I've met, honestly, and I've sat with thousands in circles, if we drop in deeply enough and we hear one another's story, at a certain point, we're going to be shedding tears together, because almost all of us have been through some pretty heavy things in this human journey. And so this is about, not about sidestepping or bypassing the pain. It's about turning towards the pain and honoring the pain, honoring the journey, and through that honor, transforming, but not from a place of, I need to fix this because this is, you know, I'm broken and this is wrong or I've been wronged. That doesn't usually work too well. But through the honor of how intense and wild it is to be a human being, a soul awakening wonder on this journey of life. All right. And as you know, I know that you each know, or else you would not have been called to this container, is that healing, awakening, inner liberation and freedom from the past, from our traumas, from whatever calls us to heal, is not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed. In fact, there's no guarantees. There's one moment I was in ceremony years ago. I was really deep in the medicine with Washuma, and there was this incredible tree in the forest in BC. And I went up to this tree, and I was just like, I love to hug trees, just so you know. And I wrapped my arms around and I hugged this tree, and I was just like, God, you're so amazing. Like, how did you become like this? And the tree said, clear as day, there's no guarantees. So that's true wisdom for you. There's no guarantees. Truly, our healing journey and life is that we each have to show up each day and choose moment to moment. How do I meet this challenge? Can I turn towards this as an opportunity to awaken to a deeper level of reality, a deeper truth of reality? Do I choose to turn towards the pain and honor all the different aspects of this life, to resolve and reconcile those aspects that are caught in the labyrinth of the past and bring that into the big love? Or do I choose to indulge in the inner victim? And that's, for me, the day-to-day choice. And it is for each one of us. But at a certain point, I realized, how could I expect this of anybody else if I wasn't willing to do it for myself? And in fact, the journey of my own healing was literally over and over and over, just continuing to choose that healing was a possibility and that I was willing to meet it 100%. And it took me well over 7 years of heavy chronic illness to even get to the point where I was willing to consider taking 100% responsibility for my life. I was pretty pissed off about that, to be honest. It's like, what? You're a doctor, you should know. You're the expert in all of the state of Arizona. You should know. You know, I went to 30 different doctors, naturopaths, different healers, and none of them could do it for me. And even though they wanted to, and they cared so much, and I had people who were so kind, they couldn't do it for me. And I can't do it for anybody else either. But we can walk each other. We can walk side by side. We can support and encourage and cheerlead and co-create the conditions, but we can't do it for anybody else. And some days it's pretty hard to do it for ourselves too. So with all of that said, you know, we access the rivers of light and the oceans of benevolence through what we have developed and call the resource and empowerment model. Now, this has been known by many who have walked this earth before. This is not a new way. However, it's an uncommon way. We also call this the way of sovereignty. So the resource and empowerment model recognizes that it's only when we claim 100% responsibility for our healing journey that we can truly begin our healing journey. It's from this responsibility that we begin the process of reclaiming our inner divine power and consciously choosing to resource, as in resourcing, reconnecting to source our lives. It's from this inner state that we create the outer conditions where true healing is and lasting transformation can occur. And there's these specific qualities that we're addressing in entheogenesis for this inner state to awaken. And it comes through loving, generous, and beautiful relationship, heart connection, care, and consciousness. And that's why, you know, the healing paradox to me is just one of those truths that over and over and over I see in every circle with each person who comes, truly and honestly, that healing is an inside job that we can't do alone. The paradox of this is in moments slightly excruciating, you know. And when we practice in this model, then the role of the practitioner and the client dissolves. And it dissolves into a non-hierarchical space where each of us is creating a greater resource and learning to reclaim more and more of our inner power. This inner power is always connected to love. This inner power is love. This inner power we can never truly be disconnected from because it's our true essential nature. However, in our innocence, we can believe that we are separate. And in the belief of separation, we create the conditions of illness. So let me restate that. when we believe in the illusions of separation, which truthfully have been conditioned over countless generations in a intergenerational inheritance of layers and layers of layers of falsehood, of what we can call the fear matrix. Fear as an acronym to false evidence appearing real. So we've inherited intergenerational conditions that foster, that inform, that make living within the illusion of separation the norm. And when we live within the illusion of separation, then we create the conditions for dis-ease. We can create the conditions for healing. We can create the conditions for dis-ease. Either way. And so our role then, in co-creating sacred space, and especially with the sacred plant medicines and psychedelics, is to consciously foster an environment with the conditions for healing, which are in some ways are kind of easy to find because they're the antithesis of our cultural conditions within the illusions of separation. And within this, we know that we are then resourced by the vibe. Say children, our daughter, or I watch kids, they immediately read the vibe, the resonance, the feeling of everybody in a room. And without the conditions of, hey, you need to be nice, you need to connect, you need to be like this, without without an adult basically interrupting that natural intelligence, kids naturally gravitate to people who are in the resonance of certain energies, certain vibrations, certain states. And these are the feeling states, the larger field of goodness, of love, of beauty, of joy, of harmony, of peace, of trust, of well-being, of compassion. And we can just feel this by looking in another's eyes. And children just know this by they don't even need to look in the eyes. They can feel it in the field. And until it's conditioned out of us, we move towards those energies and we move away from the distortion. It's that simple. Unfortunately, many of us were conditioned and forced into staying within systems or having no choice within our care providers to be in environments that we're not resourcing, that we're not in this overarching vibe of love. And so we're rebuilding it. We're relearning, we're reconditioning ourselves. And this is a process and a learning process for pretty much everybody I know. And the state of being resourced is being connected to the friendly universe, which I'm going to include in the deepening practice letter, one of my favorite quotes by Albert Einstein. It says the most important thing, it's a longer quote, but to put it shortly, is the most important thing is for you to decide if you live in a friendly universe or not. And so this resource is being in the friendly universe. We can choose at any moment to be in this place of resource by where we choose to focus our attention. What we choose to, where we put our attention is what we become conscious of. Have you ever noticed how what you pay attention to is what you become conscious of? It's like, I have this tendency to still have what in psychology is called the negativity bias. It's like I know about it, I've been practicing this, and I still catch myself starting to just go into like, and then this isn't working, and this isn't working, and this isn't okay. And I get caught in that still. And this process of being conscious of, oh, I'm paying attention to what's not working, instead of becoming, and by doing that, I'm conscious just of that. And this process is choosing that point of attention to become conscious of the great oceans of benevolence that are ever present, ever available in every breath and every heartbeat. And when we're in this state of resource, we are resilient. It is an incredibly resilient and adaptable place to be. It's almost, however, that like we actually need to train our nervous systems, train our bodies and our consciousness to actually be able to open to the resource. And that's why it's a practice. We build more and more circuitry to spend more time in this place of resource and resilience, and become more conscious when we slip out of that. And so the bigger my baseline gets for the resource vibe and the empowered vibe, then the more conscious I am when I slip out of it, which is really helpful because that creates a positive feedback loop that then I can catch myself quicker each time. Has that meant that I don't ever fall into the negativity bias? Not at all. In fact, it's still a practice, but the practice gets easier over time. All right. So within the entheogenic and shamanic realms, the universe of the sacred plant teachers, there is limitless resource available to each of us, every breath and every heartbeat. And the greatest resource there is nature and natural beauty. There are innumerable beings, countless beings of benevolence. There's innumerable beings living all around us. And all we really need to do to connect back into that friendly universe is go someplace in nature where there's not a lot of loud human stuff and become conscious, pay attention to the beauty, even become grateful that we have the capacity to witness or feel or experience that beauty. And then that creates a sacred opening. It's like we have the key to unlock the gate of the larger field of resource, which we call love. Now, love is the great medicine. Love is the greatest medicine. There's literally no energy that's more powerful than love within creation. I can fully stand in that. There's no energy that is more powerful than love. And love is the great medicine. Now, the healing journey, and Matt Kahn speaks about this beautifully, is by returning to love all those places inside of us, in our memory, in our body, even in those places where we're connected to the ancestral field and the collective, or just what happens when we have a wide open heart and we feel the suffering and pain of another. The movement, the medicine, the practice is to bring that into love. For the Danyo, Susto, and Hucha, the different energies that create impediments within our light body, within our body, mind, heart, and spirit, are created when we are not in the state of love. And so by returning them to love, we then begin this internal healing process. All pain within us longs to be reconciled and resourced and resolved. And how we do this is actually so simple. But our minds like to make it very complicated. And in our Western worldview or dominant culture worldview, we've made it very, very complicated. But it's really very simple. All it requires is 100% devotion and dedication. Very simple, just 100% devotion and dedication to bringing that pain into love over and over and over. Sometimes this is going to be 10 times, but for me, often it's been thousands. I'm not going to lie. This isn't necessarily easy just because it's simple. But truly, the greatest medicine, the most powerful medicine in all of creation is love. So love is our true essential nature. Why Darcy and I live within this truth and this reality is because what we are innately knows how to love. As children, even when we are not given love, we love. There's, we always talk about parents' unconditional love for their children. I feel like the children who are coming in, the way we love our parents, the way, our children love us, that's truly unconditional love. Had friends who've done work with youth that had to be removed from their families because there was so much violence. And no matter how bad it was in their family systems, those kids, the thing they wanted the most was to be back with their parents. It takes a very, very, very huge trauma for children to want to not be with their parents. So our true essential nature is love. We also call this our invincible innocence. Now, we call this invincible innocence because we recognize that the deeper, truer state that resides beneath all the outer experience, the memory and conditions of this life, that core nature of being is truly invincible. And while it inhabits this life through what we could call our soul embodiment, it is never tarnished by this life. It is untarnishable. Now, the deepest, most powerful healing that we can experience comes from our direct alignment and connection to our true essential nature, which is expressed as the frequency, the state of being of love. And the innocence that lives within us is invincible because no matter how far we fall into the illusions of separation or the separation game, no matter how much harm we cause, no matter how much we are harmed, this love is so big, this love of divinity and this love that is our soul nature, that we can always turn back towards it. And as the Christian mystics would say, repent, turn towards God, divinity, love, life once again. Love is also how divinity manifests itself in the worlds of form. Love is the most powerful energy within creation because it's how divinity manifests itself in the worlds of form. For this reason, love is a master teacher and the greatest medicine in existence. Love is the ground of all being. We come from love, we are sustained in love, and we return to love. Love is so big that within love, we have free will. And through our free will, we can choose to turn from love or turn towards love. This is the power of choice. This is the power of our sovereignty. Love is the foundation of truth, and truth can only be found through love. I often say in my experience that healing is just the side effect of experiencing the truth. Once we experience the truth for the love of truth, healing is just a natural side effect. And that experience of truth is why healing is a journey of awakening. Because as we awaken from the illusions of separation that have created the conditions of dis-ease and illness, that have created the conditions where we harm one another and where we don't meet the tragedies in life in a way that resolves the trauma before it even begins, because we've been disconnected from this love. That truth then brings us, for the love of truth and the truth of love brings us naturally to healing, which is also awakening. So in my experience, there is no true healing outside of the vibration, the resonant state, the sweet heart warmth of love. However, the nuance of love is that love is not control. Control is actually what we do when we're trying to not feel fear. Have you ever noticed when you're kind of starting to get like, I'm going to control the situation, I'm uncomfortable? Actually, that's what we do when we're avoiding the fear that lives within us. So trying to love something so it changes actually isn't true love, it's control. But paradoxically, if we truly love something or someone, evolution does happen. Now, whether that's within us in the field, and because we have no control, nor can we trespass upon another's free will, that love is an offering that sometimes is medicine for that person, but only if they choose to step into the field of love with us. Now, sometimes when I speak about love in this way, it can be really triggering for people. And maybe you've gotten a little triggered in this teaching so far. I've had people who have really, really found the teaching of love to be difficult because it returns us to our power and also to our responsibility. What is the big paradox of love is that while we can choose to spend as much time as possible and the resonant vibration of love, which we access through the elevated emotions of gratitude, appreciation, beauty, presence, creativity, joy, all those different practices help us to connect to love, to experience more love. But paradoxically, the big healing moments, the big awakening moments are when love wakes up through us. Now, this is the involutionary movement of love. This is when we have a divine intervention of grace. And the big love that awakens through us comes in the peak moments. And the biggest peak moments of this state of love waking up through me, have not been for me on medicine. However, I've also had them on medicine too, and I love that. What it has been, though, is that the medicine work, the ceremonial work, has served this practice of building the rivers of light within my body, heart, mind, spirit, my one unified being. And through that, opened to more and more and more of the possibility of attunement and connection and surrender to the big love. Okay. So I have just a few more moments. I'm going to close this teaching. Thank you for going a little bit longer with me today. So when you enter the ceremonial work, you get to choose your vibe. Yeah, your vibration, your inner state. And this is really where earth honoring animistic traditions have a beautiful awareness for the ritual, the prayers, either the kind of spontaneous prayers of the heart or the liturgy, the set prayers that have been passed down generation upon generation. They, the wisdom traditions shine. For the beginning of the ceremony is so much love and appreciation and gratitude. There can be hours of just the opening prayer, first spoken and then sung, and then all these different ways of ritual enactment, of honoring life, of building the field of love. This to me is so incredibly important because we want to create a very strong vibration state of this field to begin any medicine journey. Because as we enter the medicine, what's going to come up are our light body and then those patterns where there's blockages. And it's really hard, really, really, really difficult to be in the middle of a medicine ceremony and have no access to this inner resource because it's not in the field. So what I've done in that moment is I've flailed. I've gotten more and more and more lost in the field, and I've needed to draw that in. And so when we begin in a ceremonial work with the larger energies, the higher energies of love, then from there we open the space for those oceans of benevolence. Now, I feel that the other piece of the earth honoring animistic culture is that's so important to honor now, and that is really missing from almost the entire field of psychedelic therapy work, is connection with nature, is what I actually got my bachelor's degree in, which is ecopsychology, which is healing. The entire field of ecopsychology is so brilliant because the entire intention of the field is to make itself irrelevant. Isn't that awesome? An entire field of psychology was developed so that it would be irrelevant in the future. Because what it's addressing is the core illusion that humans believe we're separate from nature. And this core belief in separation has created the world we live in today. And so as we heal this, we can't do this within the four walls. As we heal this core separation, this core illusion, we have to return to the wilds, to the beauty, to the earth honoring, animistic wonder that we've known as children, that we are. And that when we step into that epic sunset, into the huge old growth trees, into the flower garden, it's just right there. And so I invite you in this week and in this time to really tap in over and over and over each day, whether you're driving and you just see a beautiful, sky scene, or you go for walks, however that is for you, to drop in over and over and over to those moments of natural beauty. Because that will be your steadfast companion to access the oceans of benevolence and then begin to learn how to build the field of resource and empowerment for all your ceremonial work to come. is so simple and it's so powerful. So with all of that, I want to say thank you so much for the quality of your presence, for your willingness to even consider the possibility of a whole new level of love, support, resource, and awakening in your life. Thank you so much for your integrity and your honor in finding this container, but also more importantly, for accessing the inner healer that resides within you. For we heal ourselves and we heal our planet from the inside out. Thank you so much. Ayumasi Kanapa. We are all one family, all my relations. Yay. Okay, friends, I went a little bit over there, but what I'd like to do is take a 2-minute bio break, as I believe it's called. And if you have questions, I'd like to invite you to type those questions in. And I can go through some questions and answers, or if you'd like to speak your question, I can also do that. I would just share that we are recording this for the group. So if you're more comfortable not having your face on the screen, then by all means, put your questions into the chat. Thank you so much, Anna. And by no means is there a requirement to stay. I'll take a break. And if you're here on the other side, I'll connect for a bit. And if you're not, well, peace and love and harmony. And I'm sending good vibes from the north coast of Costa Rica. Cool. Okay, we'll take a little break. Okay, friends, I am back and let me get the chat up. Okay. Okay. Okay, in about 1 minute, when I see a couple people pop back on, I'm going to address this first question. So, okay. So we have a question here. I'd love to talk about the main ways to open ourselves up to divine intervention of grace, the big moments you talk about. Wow, that's a great question or request. You know, it's an interesting place where the involutionary, which is the grace, the soul coming down, and the evolutionary energies of that intense desire to awaken and heal are rising up. And, you know, once again, my experiences with this, with this big love have been by grace, in that I couldn't force them to happen. However, they have happened over and over because I've been willing to show up. And honestly, I feel like that's the big requirement. It's like, you know, my healing journey, even my journey as a practitioner and learning this whole new way, you know, of life, of the plants, of the shamanic universe, the shamanic realities, has really not been because I'm determined and I can be somewhat focused, but it's not because I've been like an exceptional student. I have been focused, but mostly I can sum it up to my willingness to keep showing up. Like, that's the arc of success. And of course, in that's nuance to not forcing myself, but having a prayer practice, having a connection practice with my heart, my inner guidance, to really pray, is it in the highest and best good and good of all, and in service to all life and my greatest well-being, for me to show up in this way? And when I get a yes, no matter how rough and tumbled I've felt, I show up. And if I get a no, I don't. So with that said, I feel like divine interventions of grace come through the willingness to show up, and then the willingness to continue to turn towards, you know, the spirit that resides within all things, which, to me, the turning towards this has been a place of being so directed and aimed for the love of truth and the truth of love. You know, because the big love isn't any ideas that I've had about it. You know, it's mostly honestly been truly when I've hit these moments of like total failure too. Like, actually, as I think more about it, it's mostly been in these moments when I've like had to recognize that I've I don't know, and I don't know how to move forward. Specific examples. Okay, I'm happy to share this. So there's this moment, I was actually thinking of this as an example about this set of teachings. It's like, I was in the end of my Saturn return, and Darcy and I, after the initial awakenings with the plant medicines and the ceremonial work in Peru, returned to North America, or in Canada. And there's like a lot of different ceremonial communities all happening in BC that we got invitations to. And, you know, we kind of immersed in and tried all these different plant medicines in like a couple years, and, you know, really saw a lot of what was happening, and ended up getting hooked in with what later we recognized was actually, while it was a shamanic community, it was also kind of a cult, but a subtle cult and a shamanic one. But cult-like behavior is rampant within the medicine world. Just a good thing to know. So on the outside of this cult journey, I'd left the cult, I'd left it. And all my community, including my best friend at the time, was told and believed that I was demonically possessed and hooked into Darcy as I was a weak woman who was following her man, and I was demonically possessed. That was one part of the failure. So I had no social network because my entire social network was in this group. I'd been working a job that actually I was getting better at, but I really didn't love. But I was a manager. It was a good position. I got paid well. I'd finally, gotten a job after getting my degrees. It was for Nelson, at BC, a really good job. I got fired from the job, but before I got fired from the job, but after I left the cult, I got in a bike accident. And I crashed right here with like all the weight of my whole body on my upper lip. And I got road rash all the way down my face, broke a number of my teeth, which luckily they got repaired, and then had these intense like purple bruises on my face. I was in the hospital. I was getting, they didn't want me to move because they weren't sure if my neck was broken. And I looked up and I was like, wow, this is what I've created. And I'm like, wow, here it is. And it was just so easy in that moment. It was the most natural thing in the world to see where I could crash and to see where I could just turn towards reality. And I went into the ER, I went into this place in this state of intense presence. There was no fear. There was an awareness of mind. There was a divine intervention of grace. And I didn't have a spinal cord injury. And, later, after I got fired and after all of this, I actually realized that the greatest gift in that entire time, besides getting to choose in the hospital to be with the love, to be with the presence, to just be there. Like my soul just was like, we're not going to panic here. It's all good. Then the greatest gift in all of those experiences, even though I'd lost so much community, is that I realized there was a greater freedom, that I had the opportunity to stop living my life on every level by what others thought of me. And that in itself was a divine intervention of grace. It was fierce grace. It was wrathful grace, kind of the wrath that's talked about. But in that moment, I did choose a new way in my life. And granted, my friend group thought I was demonically possessed, which was, interesting. The people I'd been working with, I got fired, and the woman who fired me didn't tell anybody in the organization, so everybody just had no idea. But I was axed from that group. I had broken teeth and all these scars on my face. So all of a sudden, like any of my face or my aesthetic was thrown out. And I was just like, wow, all I can live from is this. And in that hospital moment, I had the opportunity to access that, and it never left. It's so beautiful. So I could share more, but that to me feels like, so much of those moments have come through some form of recognition, of surrender, of not failure in a bad way, but failure in like the healthy, humble human healing journey. It's a part of life. So I hope that was of benefit. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing that. Is there anything else before we close for today? Any other questions or reflections? Okay. Well then, thank you so much for your willingness to show up. Please let Darcy and I know if you have any more questions. We're going to really send out some media, or I don't know, smoke signals, as one of our elders calls it. We're going to send out some smoke signals and collect questions. If you have questions that are specific to medicines, ceremony, your own healing journey, your experience with the shamanic worlds, with spirits. You know, we've got a lot that we can offer. So if you do have questions, please let us know. And we will see each other next week for module 5. And I'm really looking forward to that. Much blessings and many blessings and much love. Bye for now.
Thank you, Robin.
Thanks, Genevieve. Yeah, it's good to see you all. We'll see each other soon. Bye for now.